Hey, welcome to the channel. My name is Jason, and here I talk about all things story. And the story I'm talking about today is one of my own. We have hit episode 53, the beginning of year 2 of my series, Worth 1,000 Words, a series where I write a 1,000 word short story based on a piece of artwork without an outline whatsoever. And today we have something a little more coastal. And so I had to revisit an old friend of mine, Lawsil, the very first artist who ever got me into the ambient genre. And the album I listened to is called Sea Island. And why? Because you will see very shortly. Little hint in the thumbnail, I'm sure you can tell. Not much else to say. I really need to work on getting year 1 anthology up, and for those of you who join my streams, I apologize. I know I've been lagging. I've been pretty busy in my personal life, so I haven't had a lot of time to do streaming. There might be one tomorrow, we shall see, and that is why I'm a day late with this video. Normally it's come out on Friday, today it's gonna be on Saturday, so a lot of stuff going on with me. So I'm gonna be happy when that is completely out of my way and I can continue working on writing a little bit more regularly. So with that said, let's check out this week's artwork. This week's artwork is titled Be Stranded, and it's by a freelance illustrator out of Beijing, China, named Luzan Liu. This is actually a piece of a series. I've seen there's quite a few other illustrations utilizing the same setting or the same characters, so I highly suggest you go check out the profile. So why did I choose this? Well, I'm a sucker for Lovecraft. This is very Lovecraftian in sort of a unique way. And also, what else is very interesting about it is all these children who are gathered about this carcass, wearing these old school diving gear helmets and teddy bear heads. And it looks like they all have oxygen tubes, or at least the one with the teddy bear. So it's kind of an interesting setting, and one that I wanted to explore because it almost has this science fiction kind of vibe to it. Because the illustration would be very, very different if these were just normal children gathering around this carcass. But no, they have odd headpieces. And so I think that's one thing I wanted to explore here is figure out, like, well, what is this world like? Why are they wearing these helmets? Is it for fun or is it necessity? And let's take a little closer look at the figure laying here on the sand. And it's got these strange wing-like appendages. However, I mean, they look more suited for swimming, like fins. It's a very humanoid body in the lower half anyway. And then where a head should be are these massive tentacles. And I love the composition. I love the reflection of the sand and just all of the dead fish about it, because it kind of makes you wonder, like, why are these fish dead? Is this some kind of cursed creature that either drove these fish to follow it onto shore, or something else? I don't know. I will quit talking, and we shall discover the story I came up with regarding this mysterious creature and these mysterious children. So, Luzan, thank you so much for the artwork. Very inspiring stuff. I love your portfolio. Keep up the amazing work. So with that said, let's see what I came up with. Eve was happy to be lost at sea, because it had told her being lost was being free. A tornado of fish swept around her, and she swore she could see them smile. A silly thought. She smiled back anyway, then looked down, even though she thought she would be afraid, observing that infinite darkness. Strangely, she wasn't. Maybe it was the fish dancing around her. Maybe it was the velvet light. The mist of bubbles flocked, sticking to her arms and legs. At first it tickled, then it felt like a new skin. Some collected under her chin, where she was the most ticklish, lifting her head up to face the surface. The stormy sky, distorted by foamless swells, drifted. Turning pages, she thought, and she suddenly wished she could read her book, the one that had told her of this place in symbols she couldn't read but feel. She saw those symbols now, brushed by clouds, more alive than they had been on the page. Whispers came to her, called to her, and they felt like those symbols, though she didn't understand their meaning. So many circles. She opened her mouth to speak and found she could. "I'm here," Eve said to the sky through the sea. Fins and scales and tiny teeth scored her feet, legs, and tummy. A great big bite on the tip of her pointing finger, from which a plume of red erupted. The swells that had been so gentle now frothed as if rabid, rising to great waves that came crashing down, sending her somersaulting away. It was as if the sea were trying to chew her up and spit her out. But in pockets of calm she saw something, pale and beautiful and beckoning Eve to come into its arms. She couldn't see its face, but knew it was beautiful. An angel, the one who would save her. Eve kicked her legs and scooped her hands to no avail. Dunes electrified with fractals came into view. The water and sand formed a wedge that she knew was the shore. The waves ravaged the sand into a storm that bit at her eyes. She closed them, wiped them, but that only made them hurt more. She couldn't breathe. Then she couldn't see. Then she couldn't feel. Slap, slap, slap. She could hear. Clapping, slow, deliberate. She knew it. Palms on wet sand. Eve shot up in her bed, sheets sticking to her arms and legs, which she peeled off and flung to the floor. She sat in her soaked bed, forehead to knees, and she wept. Slap, slap, slap. She lifted her head. Her room was still gray and small and lonely. On the concrete floor she dreaded the feeling of, tossed upon strewn clothes, was a small rectangle of a color that reminded her of the stormy sky. Bam, bam, bam. Furious hammering now. A shadow broke the window's light on the floor. She twisted around. It was James, his stupid teddy bear head ruining the color she loved so much, missed so much. Go away, Eve said. James wouldn't stop, his palm turning into fist against the glass. Eve huffed and donned her own gear. A large copper sphere with tiny circular windows, uncaged so she could see the world as if she wasn't wearing it at all. She flipped the suction vent to her room and waited for the sensation of near weightlessness before opening the window. Eve drove her knuckles to her hips. What do you want? James's chest pounded as his fist had. You have to come. No, I don't. James froze then, dumbfounded, and through those stupid beady lenses, Eve saw him. He stared. You already know. What? Look at your arms, James said. It's just like you said. Eve found marks, hundreds, thousands maybe. They weren't the work of fins, but they were the work of tiny teeth. Not fish teeth. Perfect circles. Bleeding. Does it hurt? James asked. Yes. Without another word, she climbed out the window, locking it behind her. She recognized the sky overhead, but she didn't smile. It wasn't right. Once they left the neighborhood, they mounted the hills that blended from grass into sand. James fell more than once, but when Eve tried to help him up, he shied away. The white noise of the beach blew over the dunes. James crested the one ahead, then dropped out of sight. Eve wiggled her toes until her feet were buried in the sand. The pull of her small, gray room was overwhelming. The sheets, even though they were wet. A nightmare brewed in her gut. The wet sand, not far now. Cold. Her collision with the shore hit her again just as hard. She fell to her knees. When she looked up, James was there again. So were Chris and Clive, the Buckethead twins. She let them help her up and take her to where she didn't want to go. Slap, slap, slap. Eve heard it above the roar of the sea. Her helmet did nothing to muffle its horror. Deliberate no longer, fists breaking jaws, bodies impacting concrete, the sound of dying. It was. The poor little fish with their little O mouths, unable to find water. Among them was something pale and angelic, but not at all beautiful. Seaweed and netting tangled in the creature's tangled limbs, It lay heaped on its side, great wings broken by the surf, flattened to the sand where its head of tentacles were piled, armed with circles of teeth. Nina was there too, inspecting from a safe distance upon a rock, and Liam, closest, bent over, ready to touch it. The angel that was a demon. The rest of them gathered around the carcass from the sea. The angel that wasn't. But Eve sat on the cold sand, knees to chest, head down. The air was full of hungry flies. "See," James said. "You were right. We're saved." "No," Eve said. "I wasn't. We're not." At first, I thought when I was going to start the story, it was going to be all of these kids as you see them on the beach. And I reminded myself that as much as I enjoy to keep everything you see in the artwork that is in the story and nothing else, I felt like I needed to pull back a little bit. Although I guess it might have been interesting to show a conversation between these kids. That could have been fun. Oh, well, hindsight and everything. So you can see in the writing, she's in the middle of the ocean. Eve, our little protagonist, who you can see sort of in the middle left area with her head on her knees. So that's who I chose to be the protagonist, and I chose to put her in a dream state because, when I was talking about the artwork, it is very Lovecraftian, and I don't think it's just the fact that there are tentacles in it. It's just a strange creature. It really kind of defies anything fantasy, and I think really if you have it set against the backdrop of the sea area with these kids who are clearly more modern day or modernish day, they're really wearing normal bathing suits and overalls apparently. The only exception is their headgear, their helmets. We have these two guys with these bucket-shaped ones, and these two girls, or actually three people, two girls, and it looks like possibly a boy with the old diving gear, and then one has a strange teddy bear head. But anyway, that got me thinking, like, well, what's going on here? And where it led me was the fact that this was kind of a dystopian world. So it's our own world. Some things have become twisted. It's definitely described when very, very minor world building cue when Eve is in her room sleeping. She wakes up, decides to open the door to greet James, but has to create some kind of, I don't know, filtration system before she can exit, as well as putting on her headgear. So I decided that being outside is not the safest thing. I just thought that was such an interesting touch to this because, if these kids were not wearing these helmets, it could have just been a regular place where this crazy creature washed up ashore and these kids found it. But that really adds a different element. And I think it honestly really makes this piece very unique. And so I didn't really go much into depth about it. Only that this girl Eve found this book with these symbols, and that's sort of the Lovecraftian element, and obviously the dreamlike communication, another Lovecraft thing. And they want to be saved because I guess they're just in this terrible world, and she finds hope, or there's promises of hope in this book, or at least she feels that there might be. And in her dream, she sees this angelic creature, and when she wakes up, this creature, in fact, is a reality, but not what she expected, and they are not saved as described by the final lines of the story. And so I was just kind of playing around here, trying to create an image of her sort of in the middle of the ocean, and there's this I don't know if I captured it very well, but if you've ever been in deep water in the ocean, at least I feel this way. Maybe it's just me, but it's really creepy. I mean, when you can't see very far ahead of you, it's just kind of like this haze. Especially when you can't see below you at all, it just empties out. It's a very helpless kind of feeling, and that's what I was trying to capture. Even though she wasn't afraid, she decided to look down. These fish were kind of just dancing around her, and right when she starts to see her savior, quote unquote savior, she's pulled back. The ocean tears her away from it. It's kind of tearing her from the dream, and that was kind of my thinking there is getting her back to awake to face this creature who's washed up on the shore. And I even turned the fish against her because in the beginning they were kind of like playful, even dancing around her in this spiral or this tornado, as I said. And now they're biting at her, and she never quite gets a glimpse a true glimpse at this creature, even though she's very hopeful by her description of what she does see. And so right now I'm kicking her back to shore, and she's about ready to hit it. And that is the moment that she is torn from her dream, from her sleep, with a slap, slap, slap. And that's kind of one of the first things I thought of, honestly, here is that these fish that are lying on the beach, just they're kind of slapping the sand with their tails, trying to get back into the water. So I imagine them not quite dead yet. And I thought that would be kind of an interesting cue because it's a very prominent detail in this image, is all these dead fish everywhere. And so I wanted to use that as kind of like a tie back, to her dream. And then also what it ends up being is James banging on the window. And so some other little things I added here too is she's sitting in her soaked bed, her what did I say? Something like a gray small, yeah, here we go. Her small gray room. Her room was still gray and small and lonely, I think I had. And that's again, like I already had this in my head that they were in some kind of future, some dystopian future where they would I guess they can't breathe the air apparently, or maybe they have a precaution, right? Maybe they can. It's just because I can't imagine these helmets providing much protection. They look far too large and not sealed very well for these little bodies. It almost as if these kids have just collected them on the shore or found them somewhere in some kind of, I don't know, who knows, junkyard. I don't know. I don't really know much about this. I'm glad I didn't explore the other illustrations as much because I felt like it would have taken me too far into the world. I just like looking at this one. I just glimpsed at the other ones in thumbnail. Try not to take too much out of it. But anyway, here we are. Bam, bam, bam. It's James. He's he's the one wearing the stupid teddy bear head. And I'm curious how people who read this story who don't see the artwork will feel about that, because it's kind of random. It's kind of out of the way. There's really not a lot of description there. I really don't like to describe people when you first encounter them kind of a head to toe. I see that a lot, actually. It's kind of strange how often I do see it, where an author will kind of just give you sort of like the the bulleted list of what this person looks like. And it always seems strange to me. It almost seems like a police description or something. And it just kind of, for me, it breaks the flow of reading. It's just that one little stupid teddy bear head. You're like, what the hell does that mean? And it just kind of piques your interest a little bit, at least mine. And that's kind of how I prefer to describe things. I think if you've read any of my stuff, you'll notice that I don't go into a lot of detail about ethnicity, or eye color, hair color, things like that. Sometimes I do. I feel like if it's, important or appropriate for the story, but I don't really detail much about how any of these people look aside from their helmets. And I think I enjoy doing that because I like the reader to come to their own conclusions about all the details of these people. I feel like it's far too prevalent in writing, where these authors are just totally describing these characters from head to toe. It's just kind of annoying, actually. And really, it's one of those, you shouldn't be doing it. There's no wrong ways to do anything in writing, technically, aside from grammar and stuff. Even those rules you can break, but it's sort of frowned upon, I think. It's funny though. I recently was reading a book that I actually quit, that I'm going to make a video about why I quit, by Chuck Wendig, called The Book of Accidents. And he falls into this quite a bit. Heavy description. He's a great writer, though. It's crazy. I feel like if he just edited himself a little bit, it would be a lot better. His work would be a lot better, because he's a very vivid writer, very cleverly descriptive, but almost too clever. And I feel like he knows it, because sometimes he takes those descriptions a little too far, and it kind of it's almost like taking a joke too far. You're like, I get it. I get what this looks like. I get what you're going for. Just let's move on with the plot. And it just kind of got in the way, honestly, of the story. I felt like reading it, it was almost as if he was too happy about the line by line work rather than the story being engaging. And it was a great reminder for me as to how important it is to just, brevity is very important. Only talk about the things that really matter. Move on with the story. Don't have pointless scenes. Don't have pointless dialogue. So I always learn stuff, even from the bad ones. And I wouldn't say it's inherently a terrible book. I just didn't care while I was going. Anyway, I will save all this for the Why I Quit video that should be coming very soon. I've actually quit 2 books since my last book videos, and I know it's been a while since I've uploaded that. However, I did read another book. Did I read 2 books? Yes, there's 2 book reviews I have to come out with. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, man, I'm going off on a crazy tangent here. I need to start talking about the story more. So what I wanted to do is, James comes, takes her out, says, "Hey, you knew it was going to happen." She's almost somewhat of a leader here. She has the book. She's having these visions, these feelings, these whisperings in her head, and everybody knows it, right? However, she's the one who's disappointed most when she discovers what's happening. And at the very end here, I'm at 870, almost to 1,000 words. I'm finally starting to bring in the rest of the characters here. Chris and Clive, the Buckethead twins, who have those Buckethead helmets. And then Nina and who's the last guy? I can't remember. The guy leaning over, ready to touch this strange creature. But yeah, I didn't. It's funny. Sometimes this happens where I take this image and it's the very last bit of the story. It seemed like a fitting conclusion too, right? It seemed like something where there's going to be some build up to it, some discovery, because there's very different body languages going about. And that's why I chose Eve to be the little girl sitting there seemingly disappointed. She's, she's has her arms wrapped around her knees and her head's kind of dipped down. It's almost like she's looking at this thing with disappointment, where the rest of the kids seem a little more curious, like the one in the upper center who's, leaning over it, very, very interested. And then James, the boy with the teddy bear head, is over there as well. And then there's another girl on the far right who's just kind of indifferent about the entire thing. She's sitting on this rock, almost observing it like it's no big deal. And then, like I said, the postures of these other kids, the 2 Buckethead kids are very similar posture. One has his hands behind his back, or she, kind of hard to tell with the overalls. And then the other one as well, hands on hips, I guess. But I think that's what I wanted to do, is try to figure out, like, well, what were these kids' expectations? What were they thinking about? What led them to this state? And so I paid special attention to kind of having that inform the story. So the girl, like I said, she's very disappointed, supposedly, sitting there. And what I wanted to do is just make sure that was conveyed at the end. Like, why did she feel that way? And I know I didn't go into a lot of detail about the others, but I think that's okay. I think just having them briefly mentioned, setting the stage, possibly didn't go into enough detail on that part, because this is such a intriguing image that I don't know if I gave it enough detail, enough weight, like, because it is very strange, very interesting. I probably could have used the description of the creature to further emphasize Eve's mental state. I think that would have been something I would change, but I can talk about that later, only because that's really important. And it's something I try to always do, but frequently forget, is that everything you write from a POV needs to convey the character's headspace. So if they're sad, if they're shy, if they're paranoid, the way you describe a room should emphasize that. It should make you feel that, because you are writing from that POV. Now, if you're writing omniscient, that could be a very different situation, but who does that anyway? No, I'm kidding. It's fine if you want to do it. I'm not a huge fan of omniscient. I feel like you're I guess both. It's very cinematic, I guess, but not in a good way, because I feel like even film tries to be very closely inside the head of the character. It's really exemplified by those shots that are holding on the expression of the character, and you have to kind of read their mind essentially through their body language and facial expressions to see what's going on inside their head. And so those are POV shots. Those are super important in film. And I think if you don't have those, it's very omniscient, and then you kind of run the risk of keeping the audience too separated. And you always want to evoke emotion. You always want your audience to be as close to the character as you can. And I feel like Omniscient just really does not get you there. So if you are writing Omniscient, or if you don't know if you're writing Omniscient, I highly suggest you look into it. Make sure you know what POV you're writing in, and make sure to make the best of it. Utilize all of its strengths and all of its weaknesses, because there's no POV that has, is like perfect all the way around. Writing a tight POV, single POV can be very challenging because that's all you can see, what that person sees. Now is the editing phase. Just tightening some things up here. Editing wasn't too bad. I just wanted to really pepper in the saving these kids, that they are looking to this goddess or this creature for assistance. And I think that's what I needed to do. And I added those in there. I'm not sure how strong it is, but they're there because I needed to have a reason more than like why were they so intrigued on this creature showing up. And so that's what I chose for this thing to save them from their doomed world, I guess. And just about to wrap it up, adding my final lines here. I chose dialogue, and I think it just hammers in the last bit we're trying to do here. And we're at 999, one word, little fix here to get us to 1,000, and that's it. Welcome to the end, dear viewer. I am so glad you made it. This is where I talk about my final thoughts, what I liked, what I didn't like, maybe something I learned. So what is to say about this story? Well, not too much really. I thought it was all right. I think one thing I learned is to maintain the mystery. Don't worry about having everything make complete sense. And I know it's funny, like the more I do this, the more I kind of contradict what I've said in the past. So in the past, I always used to try to make these 1,000-word things adhere to the 5 tenets of storytelling, which I believe I still do, for the most part. But I feel like in the past, I tried to make them hit a little harder, right? I tried to make them have a definitive end, rather than being capturing a moment. And really, that's what I feel like a painting is. It's capturing a moment. It's not telling a complete story. And this all could be BS for me to make myself feel better about making stories that aren't complete, so to speak, quote unquote. I don't know. I think some things I like about this one, it was kind of a mix of science fiction, and it had some Lovecraft undertones to it. So I didn't go full Lovecraft. I didn't go full sci-fi. I used a little bit of the cues from the illustration for world building. However, again, little hints, didn't go too deep into it. And so if you are writing something right now in science fiction or fantasy, and you're worried about someone not quite understanding what you're trying to do with world building, don't worry about it. Give them a seed. Give them enough of something to pique their curiosity, to maybe fill in the blanks. I don't think everything has to be explained. And that's honestly one of the biggest flaws I see in a lot of fantasy and science fiction is exposition, just trying to make sure everybody knows exactly what you think. But don't worry about it. You're going to have criticism for sure. You're going to have people who wanted every little detail explained. You know what? Screw those people. They don't know anything. People need to work a little. I don't believe that fiction or any kind of storytelling needs to lay out the entire story. There needs to be some room to breathe. There needs to be some mystery there. Otherwise, you're writing an encyclopedia, and no one wants to read that. So, with that said, if you'd like to support my channel, give me a like if you like the video. Subscribe if you like story-related content. Check out my books in the description below. I live stream sometimes. I know it's been some time, but usually Saturdays and Sundays between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Keep a lookout for those if you're interested in writing sprints. And give me a suggestion. I'm always looking for new pieces of artwork to write stories to. So if you have something that you think would be a cool story and want to see my take on it, send it my way. And keep reading, keep writing, and I will see you next week. Thanks. Bye. If you'd like to read the story in its non-video format, check the link in the description. I didn't edit anything else, promise. Thanks again.